Hey, it's Dianna, and welcome to the Conversation series. I am so thrilled today to be talking to Dr. Bill Renkus. I have been a patient of his in physical therapy, but today we're talking as wellness colleagues, all about what it means to be well in our body, in our mind, and our soul, particularly in the area of physical therapy. Let's get right into it. Hey, Dr. Bill, thank you so much for joining us. I'm so thrilled to invite you to the Conversation series, and I'm really excited to talk about a lot of different topics. Bill works in physical therapy, and I think he's going to bring a really awesome perspective. But before we begin anything, I would love for you to tell our listeners who you are and do your own intro, because I think that's really important to tell us from your perspective who you are now and how you got there.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's a great treat to be able to share some experience, share, just talking about wellness. So, as you mentioned, my name is Bill. I'm within physical therapy. I own a practice called Movement First Physical Therapy in the North Raleigh area. I fell into kind of this profession by pure luck. I thought about doing athletic training, and my athletic trainer in high school said, "Nah, you don't want to do this. Hours are bad and money's bad. So why don't you look into PT?" And so, doing it, I felt like it was a good vibe. Enjoyed the morale of a clinic and the kind of banter between clients and for providers, and I just thought that was a really cool kind of experience. And so I kind of got into that. It was between that and, crazy enough, like music business, right? Okay. Or like production, right? So
Wow.
kind of two different things, right? So one of the things I also loved in high school was music and production and doing film and stuff like that. So I was kind of back and forth with that for my first year of school. But as I got into like human anatomy, physiology, I really knew that, and then psychology, even, like, I knew that that was kind of the route that was going to take me to where I wanted to be. I really fell in love with learning about it all. And, the cellular stuff can be a little bit monotonous, but when it comes to the physiology and how everything works and how the body works, it's amazing. So each year after that, as I continued to get deeper and deeper into my degrees, I fell more and more in love with it and grew more and more passionate about it. And so that kind of brought me to my graduation and moved to Raleigh from Buffalo. So that's where my weird accent is from. My age is a little bit funny. But I came down, got a job, and again continued to grow and learn. Within my first job, I learned what I didn't like about the profession, and what I didn't like about, healthcare. Was very, very stressed out, to the point of wondering if it was the right profession, wondering if, I needed some sort of other help. But then luckily kind of found my way to a different clinic and was able to kind of really grow my passion again for the human body and physical health. One of the things that I loved learning is just how we can heal ourselves without, medicine, without injections, without surgery, how we can kind of heal ourselves through movement, how we can learn how our body is moving and learn how it's compensating and figure out, okay, how can we, use that knowledge to improve a certain situation. As well as I loved learning about pain. Just, it's such a fascinating topic and something that when I came out of school, I didn't really understand very well. I think people coming out of school now understand it much better. But, I had a client ask me, "I'm getting stronger, I'm getting more mobile. Why am I still in pain?" And I was like, I don't know. Let me look into that for you. And so that kind of led me down that rabbit hole of learning and exploring pain and mindfulness and understanding, how our body experiences the world and how what we experience the world, creates, our realities. And then, yeah, again, growing as a provider, I recognized the amount of energy and care I wanted to put into each person. And I didn't feel like I could do that in a traditional setting. So I decided to kind of start my own setting, or start my own business. And I really want to put as much energy and effort and care that I can into each person. And, I hope that they can experience that. And, whenever I talk to someone who I've brought on, like as a team member, like that's like the number one thing I say, the number one thing that I want you to do for a client is care.
Yeah.
Because so many times you go to a clinic or a provider in the traditional healthcare system, and you just don't feel like people care. You're just kind of the next patient. And I feel like when someone feels cared for, they're going to feel much more comfortable, and you're going to get the full story, and you're going to be able to kind of have a better chance of getting them to the place that they want to be at, ultimately.
You said healing through movement too. That like really resonates with me. And also when I think of, and you can help me define this too, when I think about like traditional PT environments versus your practice. And I was, of course, a patient of your practice, which was amazing. And we can talk more about that in a little while. I would imagine that people, and me in the past, like in my athletic times, I went to PT because there was something wrong with me and pain was telling me I needed it. So I was going to PT because there was a big deficiency or a big problem, and some doctor told me that would fix it. It often didn't fix it, but it did help, and it was part of the healing journey. And so now in your own practice that you've gotten to create, how is your definition of pain, or what pain tells you about a patient, changed? Because we often think of pain equals problem, pain equals injury, pain equals a diagnosis. So how is your definition of pain and what it gives you as a provider, what information it gives you as a provider, changed, or what is it now?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. And it's actually slightly complicated in a sense of, what you said is definitely partially true, right? So pain in my mind can be, think about it like as a smoke alarm, right? So the smoke alarm senses something going on, whether it be a fire, hopefully, is that what it's catching? And or you burnt your sandwich really bad. And so the smoke alarm is going to go off, right? So whether there's a fire and there needs to be some sort of, damage control, whether there needs to be some reconstruction of the kitchen, so if you tear a ligament or a muscle or a tendon or something, and there needs to be reconstruction, that can happen. Or if you burned your sandwich, there's nothing really going on. It just kind of there's enough of a signal coming from that area of the body that your brain received all this information and was like, whoa, like something's going on. We gotta pay attention to the smoke here. But then, people with chronic pain, it gets to a point that fire alarm can become, or that smoke alarm, can become sensitive. And so what'll happen is, again, say it's your low back, chronic low back pain or something. And you, for analogy's sake, again, kind of in the kitchen with the smoke alarm, you've burnt your sandwich enough, or you had a major fire, then you burnt your sandwich a couple times, and that smoke alarm becomes sensitive and it remembers it. Another analogy is kind of like a CEO of a company, right? So a CEO of a company kind of has to have an understanding of everything that's going on. And so if the mailroom fails to deliver an important message to the sales department, and they mess up, the CEO is going to be much more aware of that mailroom and make sure that they're on cue, on point. If that mailroom forgets one letter, that CEO is going to be like, yo, let's pick up the game. We're on alert for you. So that smoke alarm can kind of be a lot more sensitive and a lot more aware. And so say you just cook your sandwich just the way you like it, a little bit of crisp, perfectly melted cheese. I like to cook, if you guys can't tell.
Making me hungry.
You cook it just right, but there's still a little bit of that smoke coming up, but the fire alarm's so sensitive that it sends off that signal, and your brain's like, this is too much smoke, we're going to send pain. So how this relates to the body is, again, you may have had an injury in your back, car accident, or you fell or something. You may have, done some weightlifting or some sort of, heavy activity with a child, or, or just any at work or something, and you bend over and you strain your back. And, if you do that a couple times, what can end up happening is all of a sudden you bend over, pick up a dish from your dishwasher, and your brain says, whoa, like, I know this motion. Yeah, exactly. Fire alarm. So kind of determining, okay, where are we on the spectrum of pain? Like, are you at this injury area where we need to, you had an injury, you have to do the reconstruction. Technically, I don't even love that type of care, because to me, it's kind of boring. Like, no offense, but it's like, okay, we just got to kind of take it step by step by step. And, for me, the type of care is kind of that other end of the spectrum, where we're figuring out, okay, why is your body responding this way? And what is causing this overstress? And can we kind of improve those movements so that your body doesn't interpret it as a dangerous activity?
I think that is so cool, because we really believe, I believe, and I think a lot of people in society or athletics think that pain equals bad. There's something immediately wrong with me. And I think that listening to you say that really makes me believe that pain is a signal, not something wrong with you. And as someone who had previously only been to PT for injuries, like impact injuries or abuse injuries, it was like spiritually a huge win for me when I was like, I don't know what the heck is happening to my neck. And I found you, which I felt so lucky. And I didn't feel like there was something wrong with me. I felt like I was just advocating for my wellness versus like, hey, doctor, tell me there's something wrong with me and get that PT approved, please, because I just want to be listened to and be told that there was something wrong. I mean, there's a lot of different ways that could go to get diagnosed or to get assigned to PT after an injury. But for me, I just woke up one day and said, I don't think I have an injury. I think I have something wrong. And I'm just going to advocate for me feeling better. And I think a lot of us, maybe to be more clear, is that a lot of us only seek help when there's something diagnosably wrong. And I think that stops people from getting mental health help, from getting physical health help. And, we live in a system with insurance and stuff like that, where your doctor kind of has to diagnose a specific problem, which is why I didn't get help for my neck. And I'll just share with our listeners real quick. I was getting like episodes of pain every 6 months to a year where I was debilitated. And as y'all know, I'm a pretty much full-time yoga and dance instructor. That did not fly. That was not fun. Like I'd wake up crying. I couldn't move for a day or two. And I previously did have a neck strain as a teen. I had separated my shoulder as a older teen in rugby. That's a story for another day. And so obviously there was injury there, but because I knew that if I went to my GP and I said, my neck hurts, she would have felt it and gone, there's probably nothing wrong with it. There's no diagnosable impact injury or thing. And so it was,
here, do some stretches.
Yeah, exactly. My soul felt so validated when I came to you, and it was like, I don't think I'm broken, but something's not right. So I love that you talked about pain as a signal versus a problem. And that really helps. And healing through movement as a yoga instructor super resonates with me. So when you get someone coming in, I know from my point of view, because I got to be a patient of yours and come in and live it as a patient, but what are the kinds of things that you see frequently in your practice, or that you might be able to just give us some guidance on, that when I guess how would you help people advocate for themselves when they know they need help, but they're not getting a diagnosis? Like, do you see people coming in a lot with conditions like mine where they're like, something feels off, I don't know what it is? And does that happen a lot? Am I
Yeah,
am
yeah.
I special or does that happen a lot?
No, I mean, I've had people come in and they've been to multiple providers too, even.
Yeah.
So, someone like yourself, definitely. Yeah, I've had people who, one of their goals is long-term health. That's kind of what they want. They want to make sure that they have the ability to do the things that they love for a long period of time. For you, it's dance and yoga and
Mhm.
coaching and all the things that you do. Um, and then for someone else, it could be running, it could be rock climbing, it could be something else. But you also don't think about, and this is one of the things that I talk to people a lot about, and you may recall, is that beyond just enjoying or wanting to do the things you do, there's a reason you do those things, right?
Mm.
Do you run or work out or dance or do yoga for stress relief? And when you can't do that, is your stress higher? Or when you can't do that, does it make you less present with your family? Or if you can't do that, does it, impact how you can do your job? Um, and so definitely, that's definitely all things that I kind of talk to people about, is kind of figuring out,
Mm.
okay, why is this important? Yes, it's important just to get out of pain. But to me, it's more important for you to say, I want to be able to go and hang out at a party with my friends and not think that I'm going to have to get up and leave in 30 minutes because my back hurts.
Yeah.
Um, it's more important for me to hear that I was able to climb a mountain with my family for the first time without having any sort of back pain, or I was able to go out and help my husband cut down trees, just things like that. Or even like, I have someone who, it's like, I wouldn't have been able to do all this traveling if we hadn't been working together, traveling to families' houses, traveling to the beach to see family. And if it wasn't for the work that they and we had put in together, they wouldn't have been in a place where they do these things and then they're either not enjoying it, or they're worrying about kind of the repercussions, or they're
Right.
suffering the repercussions. And so those are the things that I think are a little bit more on my radar. You kind of
Yeah.
asking, like, is this something that people just come in because they're like, something's off? Like, there's always going to be something bigger too. Yeah.
That
Uh,
recognition, I think, is really validating because it made me feel validated as a patient to be like, it's like so many more things that this is impacting, and that really holistic care. And I know, like your GP just telling you how to stretch.
mm,
What are some of the tools that you use, even if they're verbal tools or actual medical tools, to make sure someone's healing all of those things versus just fixing the alarm system, which is pain? Like, what are some of the things that you utilize for that?
so just
Because I
one
felt
last.
our care was so different than any other care, but I'm not sure that I can put that into words. Maybe you can.
Sure, yeah. So just one other thing, just to kind of close out that last topic,
Mm.
is that getting down to those reasons, yes, it's important for me to understand so I can help you, but I think it's even more important for the person to understand so that they know what they're working towards.
Mm.
Because one of the challenges that a lot of, you know, s- training, yoga, physical therapy is, compliance in being able to kind of put in the work and doing the things that they need to do, not only when they're there with you for an hour. And so, making sure that they understand what they're working towards and they can have the motivation to work on the different behaviors that need to kind of become a new habit and behavior long term.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's part of it. So I help people learn how to use new habits, teaching them, watching how they do move, and then watching, and then kind of helping them understand, like, okay, you know, where do you feel this? What do you feel? Kind of, I ask a lot of questions about, you know, being able to describe things. So getting people a lot more mindful, and that's from day one, getting people mindful of, okay, oh, that hurts. Okay, well, tell me more about that. Well, it hurts. Okay, where does it hurt? When does it hurt? What does it feel like? Is it sharp, dull, achy, numb, tingling, burning? Is it only last for a few seconds? Does it get worse and worse and worse? Is it bad and then better? All those things can kind of tell me, and then I can try to teach people, you know, what it means to me when they experience these things. So that's real important with that mindfulness and that communication. And then there is the looking at the body from kind of head to toe, seeing how, you know, different tensions or weaknesses or compensations can put different stress on different parts of the body. Finding what parts of the body are, you know, not necessarily working at full capacity is something that I'm kind of trying to say now, instead of saying not working, because it's working, just not full capacity.
I like that.
Not for you, you know, not fully for you, right there. And then figuring out, okay, where's the few spots that we can address that's going to have the greatest outcome. And one of those is I test people for strengths coming from their spine to see, okay, is there some sort of deficit in the spine that's creating a weakness in the leg, whether that be your hip weakness, whether that be your thigh weakness, or from the neck going into your arm, like your shoulder or your triceps or biceps or anything like that, you know. So if there's a weakness coming from the spine, what it can do is it can create a lower, you know, again, kind of not working to the full capacity for your other muscles. And what that'll do is, like, as you do something, it's going to make your body feel like it's at a deficit. And then when your body feels like it's at a deficit, we talked about pain and how when your body feels like something's dangerous or not working to the fullest extent, like the mail room, it's going to tell you about it. So all of a sudden you get a pain in your shoulder or something, when in reality, the root cause is because there's something going on in your neck. Or, you know, for your leg, if there's something going on at your knee, the problem actually being in your back, because those weaknesses or those, you know, not being full capacity is creating like a deficit in muscle use.
That process blew my mind when you go through that. And just
it blew my mind too when I first started too. I'm not gonna lie. I was like, what? This is amazing.
As a patient perspective, and I want you to continue on your train of thought, but as a patient perspective, what it felt like when Dr. Bill did this was I would squeeze his hand, move something so subtly, and to be able to track that down back to a spinal place was so fascinating. And I particularly was really excited about you offering dry needling. So obviously that was super cool. But understanding that chain, like from a nervous system and from like a anatomy system, was so fascinating to me, especially being in holistic health. But all those subtle movements that gave you clues into where to look blew my mind. And one of the funniest things that happened on the table, I think, was you talked to me a lot about like the whole picture. And that was so fascinating to me. And then you taught me what a homunculus was, or the homunculus. And I can't, and yeah, it's just such a fun word. And so definitely define that, because I can't define it. But you gave me so much knowledge just in the way that you treated, that I really appreciated all my pain signals or how the rest of my body was reacting to other parts of my body so differently than other times I'd received help. And I was on the table and you were like doing your little test, and I was trying to focus on what you're doing and not think too hard about it, because I didn't really get it, but I loved it. And then I said, yeah, so I've been thinking a lot about the homunculus, and I hadn't seen you in like 3 weeks. And you laughed and I laughed, because I was like, yeah, that's not something I would say in my daily life, but you brought something to my knowledge
Yeah.
about my body, and I
Yeah.
would have never had that. And once again, it's just the whole health system of the
Yeah.
body. So, yeah, please go back to your train of thought.
Sure.
But
Sure.
that was my perspective on the table. Like it was constant light switches going,
Yeah.
oh, you're not treating that one body part that I'm having
Right.
pain in. You are
Yeah.
going full on.
Yeah. Right. You can't, because if you just do that, it's going to either come back or, it's, yeah. But I mean, just that example, it's like so important because you gained a whole new way of understanding, there's mindfulness, and then there's like even understanding that mindfulness. Like,
Mm.
okay, this is what I'm feeling. Okay, this might be why. Okay, like, and then even the whole, I don't even think we had to get into it, but with some people with chronic pain, I have to say, just, label that as a feeling and then move on.
Mm.
Kind of like in terms of mindfulness in the mind and thinking, okay, that's a thought, that's a feeling. You have to do that with your body sometimes too. If you have had chronic pain, you have to say, okay, I'm aware of that. That's it. It's just there. I've had to do that in my own life.
Mm.
I had injury where I had pain down my leg, and like it was bad to the point where it was hard for me to sit and do my work, and couldn't walk comfortably, couldn't really do much comfortably. And I was able to heal and heal and heal and continue to progress. And I get to this point where it was so frustrating because it would be if I was sitting and watching TV at home, and all of a sudden I just start having this aching down my leg, and I was like, oh, I can't even relax and just enjoy watching TV, and I'm shifting and trying to get the right position, right? So I was trying to get the right position and feel better, and then I was like, you know what, nothing's wrong, like, it's okay. It's not that I'm doing something wrong or sitting in the wrong position. I just ate pizza. My body is super inflamed, and that's why I hurt in this position right now. Not because I'm in this position, but because I'm super inflamed from having eaten pizza. And
Mm.
then I sat down in this position. So it's so much more. And if I can give that understanding to people, that I feel like is, so valuable, just to be able to kind of have that understanding for the rest of your life, and not worry that something's going on and something's wrong, and constantly feeling like you're at a deficit because you have some sort of pain. But yeah, so the homunculus is a is a part of your brain that is kind of basically kind of the middle of that big pink thing. And what it is, it has a big picture of your body. And different parts of your body are bigger in the homunculus because we have more nerves there, and your brain has more awareness there. For example, your hands or your lips are going to be kind of bigger in the homunculus. Your feet are
Mm.
pretty big because they should have lots of sensory information, but again, for another conversation, we wear foot coffins. um, um, so yeah, so it kind of gives you not only the sensory input, so everything coming in, it also has so there's two sections: input, so everything coming in from your body, and then output, so everything going out, how you know what you're going to do with those areas of your body in terms of movement. And I think, I could be wrong, but we probably discussed how when you have an injury or something goes off, what it's like is, if that picture of your body is a nice watercolor painting, you took a sweaty thumb and you smudged that area, right? And so that area is now a little bit blurred in your
Mm.
brain. And so what'll happen is, as you do exercises, as you get mobilizations, dry needling, movement, all the things that are happening in somebody's care or in your life are then kind of retracing that picture of your body so that you can have a clearer understanding of what's going on. So that's, one piece to rehab and healing. And then there was another piece, but I kind of forget it.
That's okay. I asked you a lot of questions in that
That's
one
okay.
question, but I
No,
think
there's another piece to it, but yeah, it's all good.
it'll come back. I remember specifically you either had your thumb or the needle, or you were just like, you were telling me you were in a specific part of my back and I didn't feel it there. I thought you were in a different spot. And so coming from a very mindful soul place and how I think of wellness and understanding my body, it blew my mind that something like the homunculus was so like scientific and body oriented, but it also influenced the way I understood mindfully where my pain was or where that touch was, which was pain, and how I identified that. So it was interesting to kind of have that like mind body science mesh. And also, I talk about like mindfulness or yoga or like the chakra system, and like sometimes these things get really nebulous and spiritual and mindful, but there's so much evidence for those things to be grounded in anatomy, science, and the body. And so one example that I was just thinking of, especially being able to like advocate for my health and come to you and get work done on my neck and shoulder, the chakra system that's most closely related to that is the throat chakra. And that's all about communication and being able to advocate for yourself and speak your truth and receive truth and things like that. And when I kind of reflect on my experience, finally getting help with this issue, like the amount of stress relief that came just from asking for help really aided in that healing.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
then when you think about that mindful chakra system, it's like I literally finally advocated and spoke my truth about my own needs. And it kind of just links a lot of this more mindful or Eastern thought processes with real science that you cannot deny. And for anyone who's listening who isn't familiar with the chakra system, the best example I can give you is if you are feeling unsafe and stressed and you have to do something really scary, and all of a sudden, this is a lot to process, but if all of a sudden you have diarrhea, that is root chakra stuff. That is your body going into panic mode, and that is at the root. And so safety and security is in your root chakra, which governs your digestive system and other rooted places in your body. And I think we can all agree that when we're stressed or feel unsafe, we either don't go or, man, we have a problem and we need to go. Yeah. And so when I think about the neck and my issues with you, even just learning about something like the homunculus, like just linked so much. And I like your mindful approach to doing all of this because it just was a different way of advocating for my own health, which is really cool.
Absolutely. And I mean, that brings up two thoughts for me is that, we talked about pain again, kind of, and your body's awareness and the smoke alarm. So your nerves everywhere have lots of different receptors, right? So you have different receptors that take in different chemicals, and those chemicals will excite a nerve, right? So what can happen is, when you have an injury, you get excited with those chemicals. But if you if your brain gets so sensitized to that area, that what will end up happening, and this is why, so what will end up happening is that people will experience pain. Again, I said something about me eating pizza and my leg hurt, right? You'll experience pain because of just the excitement of that area, not because those same chemicals of the quote unquote danger signals or pain, they're not pain signals, but irritation signals, right. But because I had inflammation all over my body, and so that everything was excited, but those nerves were excited, and my brain was like, wait, those nerves are excited. We're gonna just let you know that there's pain there. But that can happen with if you're sick. So if you get sick, you're immune. So your immune response, your body is going to get excited. It's going to get activated, those nerves, those same nerves. But then again, your brain's going to say, oh, those nerves are firing again. Must be pain. We got to do something about it. We should probably send pain. If you're stressed, same thing. If you are super stressed and those chemicals go into your nervous system, they excite that nerve. Your brain says, oh, that nerve is excited again. I should probably send some pain. I should probably tell it that something's wrong so that you get up and move around. So, and then the last one that I was going to say is pressure, like change in barometric pressure. And that's why people will say, oh, I can tell when it's going to rain because my knee starts hurting. Like that's real. Like it's basically the pressure receptors in your nerves get excited. Your brain is so used to any sort of signal from that area being a danger signal or something. And so it sends the pain that tells you to start moving or do something about it. So that kind of that brain and stress and all that stuff, that tells me one thing. And then the other thing was like, luckily I was able to kind of, be there for you and make you feel comfortable and give you some of the validation and all that stuff. But if for some reason I wasn't, or if for some reason someone else isn't, one of the main predictors of if someone is going to get better is if they believe they're going to get better. If you don't believe you're going to get better, there's a likelihood that you're not. Or if you don't believe that a certain, if you don't believe that dry needling is going to help, or if you don't believe that massage is going to help, there's a likelihood that it's not going to help. So there's
like mind blowing, but so simple, but so mind blowing.
Yeah.
Right.
And so it's like, it can be so powerful, but then your brain can just say, nope, we're not gonna, and so it's very powerful. It's very powerful. So I have to kind of work with that stuff and kind of make sure I communicate properly. And down the line, one of my future goals is to have some form of mental health provider in the practice so that, if I feel like there's some sort of limitation or some sort of challenge that someone's going through that is contributing to their pain, that I can have them go and work on that stuff. Because if you don't work through that, unfortunately, I can't help.
And having it all in one place is such a strong advocacy system, because like I feel proud of myself that I have an emotional therapist, a mental therapist that I see every few weeks. And I was someone who was also seeking physical help, but I know so many people in my yoga, dance, coaching world that it's just hard to do all of it. So the fact that you bring it together, just yourself being mindful of it and your patients is important. And then to think that down the line, that's going to only be increased with even more resources for them, I think is just so cool. And, I think believing in a modality, whether that be anything from healing and medical stuff to yoga or dance, like if you believe it's good for you, it speaks volumes. And this is very off topic, but I was doing a workshop and they were talking about like intuitive and more spiritual tools. Like, for example, tarot is like so big right now. Everyone loves a good tarot card. Or wearing a specific medallion, even religious medallion or a crystal or whatever the thing is that you surround yourself in, whether it's physical or spiritual or mindful. Like I have, this is not PT related. I have sage sitting right here, so I can sage my house. Like I believe sage works, so therefore it works. Like it clears the energy in my house. Like, so when we're thinking about like greater wellness, mind, body, soul, like this is why I think it's just like, it's all the same. Like so many of the tenets that make body stuff work, makes soul stuff and mindfulness stuff work. With all this stuff that you have in your brain, how do you not walk around the grocery store or like life and not just like be thinking about them all the time? Because as a yoga practitioner, more when I was a runner, I would walk around life or be in a race with someone and be like, they're pronating or they're supinating, or like, oh, they should, like, how do you balance being so passionate in your work and then also just like being Bill day to day? And maybe that's some things you do in your own life that help you feel balanced, or what leaks out of your practice into your day-to-day life. Maybe that's my question, and you can take it however you like.
Yeah, I have to make a concerted effort to not do that. It's so part of it is that, and then part of it is an understanding that, just because I do see these things doesn't necessarily mean that these people are having a bad experience. So like, I used to be like, oh, this person's doing this, I bet they have right hip pain or something. But
Mm.
now I just kind of see it and I'm like, oh, okay, that's happening. And, you know, I've learned to not think that certain movements absolutely do create certain pains,
Mm.
because certain, like, people can have different movement patterns and not have pain. And then another thing is people can have tissue injury and not have pain. So it's like just having that, yeah, raise your
Wow.
eyebrows.
Yeah,
So
like it's kind of mind blowing.
we could talk about that in a little bit, but yeah, so I really have had over the past year actually really worked on just shutting off, being able to kind of go home, and I didn't get a chance to talk about it, but I'm a father of an almost 2-year old, so she keeps me occupied very, very much. A loving wife, and just kind of making sure that our house and home kind of continues to flourish, is a full-time job in itself. So I try to turn it all off. But that being said, I do think about my clients and, think about different ways to help them, or continue learning new ways to help motivate or improve their experience. But yeah, like if I'm watching someone walk, I see different patterns, and yeah, I can't help but see it, just because that's what I'm trained to do now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then, yeah, I mean, I even it's just a very, I don't know, it's a very interesting thing. So it's almost like, I don't know, probably couldn't do an example, but yeah, I
No, I
really
hear what
enjoy
you're
it.
saying.
What was that?
I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
I think it's a gift to be in like the mind, body, soul wellness industries. And I think you get to bring a lot of goodness home. Like, for example, I'm sure teaching others how to be aware of their body and mind helps you be more aware in your body and mind.
Mm.
And
It can be
but then
exhausting.
yeah, it goes both ways, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah, it can be really exhausting. I mean, that's something that I sometimes have to kind of be mindful of when I go for myself, right? So it's just like how
mm,
exhausting it is for these providers, and just to kind of have that little bit of grace for them, because it's exhausting. Like they do care. Everybody does care, but sometimes, unfortunately, they don't have the time or the energy to, because of
mm,
just the type of practice they're in. And so, you know, um, my wife and I joke. My wife is an occupational therapist at a hospital, and we joke that, we use all of our pleasant patience and care at the office, and when we get home, it's just kind of like no holds bar. Like, we're just kind of just kind of let it go, and the patience is gone with whatever. And so again, that's something we have to work on. Um, but it's exhausting, and but at the same time, as you mentioned, it's pretty rewarding to wake up each morning and feel like you're making an impact on people's lives for the better.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty powerful. And I think that as a couple, being in a similar industry must be really cool, and also clearly be hard too sometimes. I've obviously worked with kids and teaching dance a long time, and my fiance is a school teacher, and we've had times in our life where we're teaching the same age group of kids, and it's so cool to come home and be able to share some of those
Yeah.
stories and have someone who understands, even in a small way. But then also, I think when you're working in a career in service to others, you have to be even more mindful of how you're serving yourself and reserving that kind of energy.
Yeah.
Um, and that's pretty tough.
Yeah, it is. It's also a very interesting, um we're getting into the fun topics now.
Big.
Yeah, so it's really interesting, because I also go to therapy for myself
Mhm.
for challenges I have. And as you mentioned, it's so important to kind of have the care and the appreciation for yourself that you provide to each of your clients, because something as simple as like like I remember little tiny things about clients from maybe 2 years ago. And then I can't remember things about conversations I've had outside of work with myself or like, and so it's like, why don't I care enough to remember that? And so you have to really care about yourself to that degree, because then, and think that you're worthy enough to that degree that it's important for you to remember. It's important for you to experience and be present and not just kind of float on by. It's important for you to be present to the point, to that degree that you are with the client, and you're putting your full effort into them to be able to give them a good experience. It's important to do that to yourself, or else you just get burnt out, and you have to live for that. You have to live for that external appreciation, as opposed to having that internal experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I think too, like I'm happy that like social media and general like popular culture is becoming more mindful and telling us things like fill your cup first before you serve others, or things like that. But it's so hard, and it's so easy to say, and it's really hard to do. And I think that because what you're saying just resonates with me so much. And I've talked to other people who are teachers, service providers of various kinds, doctors, nurses, people like that. And it's great that we are becoming more and more mindful and therapy positive, and but it also means that these words like serve yourself first, or fill your own cup first, or are becoming
from an empty cup.
Yeah, that's the one. You are everywhere, but then it doesn't tell you how hard it is. And then it's almost isolating, because you're like, oh, everyone says it, or wow, it's becoming more and more accepted, but no one tells you how to do it. And that is a struggle. And when we think about medical people through the pandemic, like the conversation we could have on aiding ourselves, filling our own cup, and how to do that could just be absolutely endless. And I know that through the pandemic, probably no matter what your job was, you're used to going out into the world and doing your job and feeding whatever machine of an industry you're in, and then to have to turn inward and really only be focused on yourself is horrifying. And I don't think I would have spent time thinking about my shoulder and advocating for my own health had I not gone through the pandemic first, because I saw you post pandemic. And I know from my own standpoint, as someone who serves others for a living, it was really hard to look inward and to not have the noise of life to distract myself from my own.
Magnified a lot of things, right?
Yeah.
What do you do to fill your own cup?
Yeah, so I find that meditating has been the tip top thing. I feel like it calms my nervous system. It aids in releasing tension in my body. So we have the physical thing covered.
And how do you
mentally
make sure you do it?
The moment I think I should do it, I do it.
Cool.
I find that a lot of people say get on a schedule, do it, whatever, like do it every morning. It doesn't work for me. I don't know why. I find that a schedule stresses me out, because then if I can't live up to it, I do have an irregular schedule work-wise, I feel like a failure. So if I think I should be meditating, or I need to take a moment for myself, I might just look at the clock and say, I'm only going to take 4-part breaths for the next minute. Like I was nannying the other day. The baby was asleep. I was making my lunch, and I literally put 2 minutes on the microwave, and I was like, I don't want to go sit down yet. I'm just going to stand here. And then I was like, oh, 2 minutes of time. And I literally like counted the seconds and did my inhale for 5, held for 5, exhale for 5. And it was like, it doesn't have to be so complicated.
Right. Well, I think
how are you doing it?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that's kind of like you're saying, like, oh, people are like, take time for yourself. I think there is even like people understand like, oh, I could meditate, I could journal, got to get out and move, got to do this. There are different things for everybody, but I think what you just described and what I just asked is probably the next level of like, okay, well, how do you do it then? Like, yeah, I know I'm supposed to meditate, but how do I fit that in? Like, we, unfortunately, you don't slow down enough. And you might be familiar with the saying, is someone who says they don't have time for meditation probably needs to meditate for longer. So for me, it's understanding my habits. Movement and exercise has drastically improved like my anxiety and the kind of that jittery energy I have. So I make sure that I kind of got to get that in now. And I know myself. I know that if I don't get it in first thing in the morning, and if I don't do it in a group setting, I'm not gonna do it. As a movement professional, right? Like, I'm not going to do it. That's just how I am. So it's like, luckily I'm part of a group fitness, and I get up and at 5 a.m, go work out, and I'm done with it. Yeah. Thanks. So that, meditation, definitely when I need to do it more proactively, as you're kind of describing, but I definitely, if I feel ramped up, I'm like, okay, we need to take 5-10 minutes to just sit, breathe. I use Headspace or something, or I just breathe. A good diet is helpful. But again, that's challenging in itself. I think it comes down to, discipline, and, within discipline also, discipline is kind of an interesting word, right? So like, some people would think about discipline as you got to do it, like, be disciplined, like, be on top of that. Like, why can't you just just do it? But in reality, you have to think about discipline as you care enough about yourself and the benefits that you'll get from this, in order to stay on track and continue to do things even when you're not really motivated. So yeah, same thing. Or if you're not feeling good, so like with diet or exercise, continuing to do it even if you're not motivated, is the time that you have to have the most care for yourself, to not let yourself slip up, as opposed to the most discipline that you're just shaming yourself if you don't do it. If that makes sense.
It makes 100% sense. And in kind of closing and wrapping up this super conversation that we have just covered so much so quickly, which just feels so organic and great, and it's been so nice talking to you. If we're thinking, as such a mindful provider as you are, what advice would you give humans, whether they're yoga people, dance people, moms, dads, like, what advice would you give them when they feel off, they feel that smoke alarm going off? Like, obviously coming in and getting help is the thing to do, likely, but what would you say to them to encourage them to feel more comfortable coming in or seeking that help? Like, what would be that little wisdom that you could whisper into their ear to be like, yeah, you're worth it? Like, what might you tell that person that's wondering if they need some help?
Yeah. That's a tough question.
It's a really big one. And I struggle with what I would give advice as well.
I talked about it with people, and it comes down to what we talked about, filling your own cup.
Yeah.
Understanding that by for a parent, I think, and that's kind of who I talk to the most, because parents want to do everything and anything they can for their child. And so for a parent to understand that by taking an hour away from your child, whether it be just for yourself, whether it be to get care, your interactions when you are with your child will be exponentially better.
Yeah.
Or with your spouse, or with your family, or with your friends, or with your practice of yoga, right? So if you take a day off of yoga to go and get care for your body or your mind, then when you're at yoga, you're going to be able to be more present. You're going to be able to be in the flow a little bit more. So I would say that, a lot of people say, oh, I don't have time. I don't have time, or it's just that little thing. It doesn't really bother me. I would say, I had someone say, I have this little thing that it's just a little thing. It's not that big of a deal. It doesn't stop me it doesn't bother me. And then when I started asking them questions, they were like, oh yeah, well, I guess I don't really hold my son that often. And I'm like, what? Like, that's huge. Yeah. And then, so yeah, or if we sit down and read, I can only do like a book, and he just wants more and I can't. Or I really loved baking or cooking and I can't because of this pain. But it was like, oh, it's just this little thing. So it's like, think about, okay, how is this little thing impacting you a little bit more? Think about how, if you're super busy or don't have time for it, think about how much time you either spend worrying or stressing about this thing, and how much that would be gone and save you time. And then think about how much better of an experience you'd be able to have with either yourself, your friends, your family, your workout group, your kids, your work, if you didn't have to experience this challenge, whether it be mental, physical, and if you kind of think of those three things, usually it helps you understand, okay, yeah, I do want to get this taken care of. And then I would say, try and find someone who's willing to listen to you and talk to you and figure things out, and not just slap a band-aid on it, or think that something's gonna, I don't know. I think that's another barrier, is that a lot of people struggle to find a provider that they can trust, and that's going to care. So it's the time it takes to find that provider is also the time that you're investing in your future self. So again, if you're too busy to find a provider you like, but if you don't find that provider, you're going to eat, like, if it's your mental health, you're just going to be struggling with that mental health. If it's your physical health, it's potentially going to get worse, and you're going to get more limited if you don't invest that time in finding the right provider, having those conversations. So hopefully that helps people kind of advocate for themselves, as you say, and look for providers that can help them with different things.
Yeah, I love that. Well, I'm very thankful that you are that provider for me along my movement journey, which was like really blew my mind in a lot of ways. And I would love to, if you could share how people can find you and all that good stuff, whether it's social media, websites, or anything like that. And then if you have any last things that you feel are unsaid that you want to share, you're more than welcome.
Sure. Thank you. So you can find me. My practice's name has just changed. So there's probably two different ways you can kind of find me: Movement First Physical Therapy. And the URL is move1stpt.com. You can also go to mfhw.life, which will direct you to my website as well. I'm on Instagram as movement. I probably should know that, shouldn't I?
I'll put it all in the notes.
Yeah, so I have Instagram. I'm on Facebook. Bill Rankus, you're welcome to friend me. I have a Facebook group called Movement is My Medicine, where I post tips and tricks to kind of help with pain. I've got, tons of resources, books, video series, YouTube videos. So if there's ever anything that you are struggling with and you'd like some sort of, something that might help, feel free to ask. And if you want to talk with me, you're welcome to message me on Facebook or Instagram. Or if you want to kind of have a little bit more of a formal conversation, you could go to callwithdrbill.com, and you can sign up for like a virtual chat where we would kind of talk about what's going on specifically with you, and what things you're struggling with, where you hope to go, and I'll give you my best advice in terms of what to do next, whether that be go talk to a certain doctor, whether that's visits with me, whether that's continuing to work on it yourself. So just kind of happy to help in any way I can. And then my email address is too tough to listen to and write down, so I'll just give it to Dianna to write down. But yeah, and I would just leave it with you don't have to experience you don't have to just suffer through pain and limitation. Pain and limitation is not natural for getting older. And if you put in the work and kind of the right ingredients, you are going to be able to experience life at a different level, because you're going to feel better and move better.
I love that. Well, I appreciate you so much coming on. And I think you've spoken a lot into people's worthiness and advocacy, which is just whole mind, body, soul enhancing. So thank you so much, Bill. Stay on the call for me, but we're going to say goodbye to our listeners. Thank you guys so much for enjoying this episode. Do follow us. I'll put everything in the show notes. And we're just so thankful to have Dr. Bill here today. So we'll see you soon. A big thank you to Dr. Bill Renkus for coming on to the conversation series. I'll be sure to link all of his information below, and I do hope you connect with him, especially on social media, or for any of your PT needs here in Raleigh, North Carolina. Thank you so much for joining me for the conversation series. Have a great day.